the government to send resources and help. I beg President Trump to send the right resources. But as far as...
Yeah, that's the biggest issue here, is that these are solvable problems, okay? There's no problem that you can't solve with financial restitution by offering the right resources. The problem is these don't want to do that. Anyway, speaking of which, there were a lot of protests against the Trump administration and the conditions that American laborers face in general. Certainly gotten worse under the Trump administration. So let's take a look at some of those protests across the United States that target Trump's policies.
Protesters taking to the streets on Labor Day from Auburn, Maine to Newport, Tennessee, St. Joseph, Michigan to Ventura, California, railing against President Trump and other billionaires who they claim are taking power away from the working class.
Hey, ICE agents have got to go!
And the nation angry over Trump's takeover of law enforcement in D.C., announcing a week of demonstrations on Capitol Hill this week as lawmakers return from summer recess.
We call not only on community leaders, but our elected officials to stand with us as we continue to fight to protect home rule.
D.C.'s mayor struggling to walk a political tightrope, initially welcoming federal law enforcement, but later saying the involvement of immigration agents went too far, criticizing the use by some agents of masks to hide their identities. But Trump praising D.C.'s mayor yesterday, saying, wow, Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people in bringing crime down to virtually nothing in D.C. The Trump administration says among the recent arrests in D.C. is a suspected MS-13 gang member in the country illegally.
No troops in Chicago! No troops in Chicago!
In Chicago, demonstrators condemning Trump's threat to launch an immigration crackdown in the Windy City as soon as this week.
We're going to defend our democracy in the city of Chicago. We're going to protect the humanity of every single person in the city of Chicago.
The mayor threatening legal action and signing an order barring Chicago police from helping federal authorities with immigration enforcement. In the meantime, new data shows the administration's immigration crackdown is reshaping the U.S. labor force. More than 1.2 million immigrants have vanished from the workforce since January. Immigrants make up nearly 1 in 5 U.S. workers, including nearly half of all farm workers and 1/3 of construction workers. Farm advocates say crops have been left to rot, and contractors say they're now struggling to fill crews at job sites.
Now, union leaders warn that the impact goes far beyond farms and construction sites, pointing to hospitals and nursing homes, where immigrants also make up a large share of the workforce.
I lost 9 family members to only one of my family members made it to be in his 40s.
Cedric Hawkins is now 44. He works with the ambulance group Chicago Cred, trying to make peace before things turn violent, sometimes between gangs.
Is just trying to be able to obtain a non-aggression agreement. That don't mean that I don't still feel like that you deserve to die. That just means that right now we have a respect level, and the respect is, I don't like you, you don't like me, I ain't gonna come in your hood, you don't come in my hood.
And that is good enough.
And that's good enough.
And in his Southside Chicago neighborhood, he takes pride in even that compromise, because it means results.
Last year we had 4 individuals in the Pullman area at this time.
Yeah.
This year, 2025, we haven't had 1 individual this year.
President Trump has threatened to want to send in the National Guard. You feel like even just like the presence of military here.
Presence of military will put our communities in a situation where they feel like they are incarcerated. We are already in a situation in Chicago where the trust with CPD law enforcement is very, very low. He's gonna do nothing but put our communities in Chicago in a situation where the trust is gonna go lower than it already is.
It might throw off the playbook that it sounds like
is working.
Citywide, murders are down over 30% compared to last year, and shootings are down almost 40%, which is on pace to be below pre-pandemic levels of violence. But that's still over 250 lives lost.
Right now, we're in Chicago's most violent neighborhood as far as rates of shootings go. And even though we have seen decreases, people are still tragically getting shot and killed. We're on our way to talk to a woman who's lived in this neighborhood for a long time. And I have a feeling she has some thoughts on this whole National Guard possibility.
My grandkids can't sit outside. They can't sit in the living room or at the kitchen table because a bullet may come through.
Rochelle Sykes has lived in West Garfield Park all her life. Her neighborhood's changed.
President Trump has talked about sending in the National Guard to help with this situation.
That's not the solution.
So even you live in what is known to be the most violent neighborhood in the city in terms of shooting rates.
Mm-hmm.
You don't believe the National Guard should be here?
No, we don't need a Band-Aid to cover up the problem. What we need is a solution. No offense to the president, but we actually need someone that's in this community. You need to go and talk to the children in the schools and ask them the question, what would make you feel safe?
It's that question of safety city leaders are still trying to figure out.
What would you assess has worked to this point?
You know, let me start by saying we have a long way to go. What I will say when it comes to crime, we've created task force around robberies when we saw a spike in those, smash and grabs, burglaries, shootings, homicides, obviously. Having our Bureau of Detectives work with our Bureau of Counterterrorism along with the Bureau of Patrol, working across those borders where we've seen those particular bureaus siloed in the past. You have to have buy-in from your officers. And we've gotten buy-in, but we also have to face the reality. If we brought our homicide rate down to 1 homicide, we can celebrate that, and that's great. It would be absolutely great, except for the one family who lost a loved one to a homicide.
Where'd it hit you?
On my arm and my legs.
King, as he's known, was shot while living in Atlanta and moved to Chicago for a fresh start.
People be asking, like, why I come from Atlanta to Chicago? Like, it's a war zone and stuff, but I don't look at it as no war zone, you know? From what I see, it's a lot of built up hurt, man, a lot of built up anger. Years going by, people just losing family members, losing friends at a young age. I be giving up on myself when I see, when I just run into challenges. They be quick to give up on Chicago.
And people like Kendall Reed, who also works as a violence mediator, refuses to give up on Chicago.
Send mental health in. Open more facilities for us. Give us more opportunities. Stop closing the school down. Send those people in. Don't send the military in. If what we're doing is working, it may not be working as fast as you would like it to work. None of this all happened overnight. Chicago is a beautiful city. I want my kids, and I want my grandkids, and I want my nieces and my nephews to enjoy these parks. I want them to enjoy the museums, the many things that Chicago has to offer, and we're progressing at that.
For said,
This is a calling for me.
the fate of his city, he says, won't come from boots on the ground, but ears to the ground.
I would never say that it's not beneficial for the government to send resources and help. I beg President Trump to send the right resources, but as far as
Yeah, that's the biggest issue here, is that these are solvable problems. Okay, there's no problem that you can't solve with financial restitution by offering the right resources. The problem is these don't want to do that. They don't want to do that at all. They want to send the wrong resources, not even resources at all. I'm going to keep repeating this over and over again. Chicago Police Department is a terrorist cell, okay? They literally had black sites where they would torture people. If that kind of attitude if that kind of enforcement, if that kind of militant enforcement was successful in crime prevention, Chicago will be crime-ridden. But it's not. Same with St. Louis. Yes, it's crazy. It's crazy to me that this is like, we look at this shit and we're just like, nah, what is happening is that the cops are not brutalizing these people enough. No, dude. And the solution, especially for like youth crime, for example, because like there's a lot of, and a chunk of that comes from like youth crime, right? Teenagers and shit. Crime-free, not crime-ridden. Oh, sorry. I meant rid of crime. Why do you support Graham Plattner? Because I'm a Western chauvinist who loves American imperialism. Anyway, that's it. Anyway, as I was talking about youth crime, for example, the solutions are laughably simple. Literally, it's just like outreach, after school programs, like a basketball league or like a sports league, art program, shit like that, unironically cut that shit down so much. And it's crazy that we're just like, nope, can't do that. Yeah, you open up like community centers, you get people you get people free food, a place where people can gather, just shit to do, and you cut away at a decent chunk of any sort of criminal activity. It's crazy. It's cost effective, and it is the best possible solution, the most effective long-term solution. And it's crazy that like we're just not even entertaining it. It's happening. It's happening in Baltimore, right? Baltimore has a great program for this. I have some issues with like the way that they work with the police force on said crime prevention, but having said that, it's not even like it's not even a secret. It's just something that people understand. The people that live it every day understand it. They say it. Nobody cares. Nobody listens to them. The only reason why they're getting a platform right now is because Donald Trump is like, yeah, we're going to sick the military on these guys.
Then a National Guard, I believe that it will put us in a situation where the whole city of Chicago will be right back where we started.
We have some breaking news. A federal judge just ruled that both President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth violated the law by using the military in the Los Angeles area over the summer. The Trump administration deployed thousands of federalized California National Guard members.
And a big part of the process here is that like you're not doing this for people living in Chicago. You're not doing this for the residents that are going to be living under the oppressive thumb of like a military occupation. You're doing this for in Ohio that literally think, oh, there's black people there. You have people there. You need more enforcement. That's it. Half the time, the communities that they're in fucking Ohio are just as poor and just as crime ridden, by the way. Crime riddled. Sorry, not ridden. Fuck, I said it again. Crime riddled as the south side of Chicago that they point to. Like, that's it. It's for those guys that Trump is doing this. It's crazy that it's just like we treat people like they're fucking nothing. Like they're just like disposable. As a Chicagoland resident, I welcome the National Guard. I saw some litter near the Bean the other day, and I really think my tax dollars should go to some redneck from Texas National Guard to wait 90 minutes in traffic to come down from NS Great Lakes to pick it up and proceed to complain about how cold it is. Yeah, I mean, the other side of this is like, yeah, if they were doing like city beautification and they made these like National Guard guys like literally pick up trash, then fine, great. I mean, make sure that they're not armed in the process as well.
Marines during an immigration crackdown in June. And this decision comes as the president weighs, as we were just talking about, whether to send National Guard members to other cities, as he has done in Washington, D.C. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor and Politico magazine senior writer Ankush Khardori. Ankush, thank you for coming here. So what is the judge's reasoning here?
Well, the judge's reasoning is fairly straightforward. He says that the Posse Comitatus Act prevents the deployment of the military on U.S. soil for normal law enforcement operations. And he held, after conducting a trial on this matter, that the National Guard was deployed in California for normal law enforcement operations, arrests, searches, stops, helping.
I wonder if I'm in this. Like, I was like right there.
Execute search warrants and things like that. And he said that this is illegal. And one thing I would point out that may get lost in the shuffle as we cover this, it is not really going to be relevant given the president runs the Justice Department effectively, but violations of the Posse Comitatus Act are a crime under ordinary circumstances, a low-level crime, but a crime nonetheless.
So what would the consequences be potentially for the president or defense secretary, also given the fact that this is after the national...
I think one of the funniest things that I experienced was that the fact that those motherfuckers didn't want to be there either. Like they were just like walking around and like, I don't know. Like there were some, like the federal law enforcement, they were horny. They were like, oh, I can't wait to get a confirmed kill here, you know? But like for the most part, the National Guard, they were just like, yeah, I don't know. I guess we're here. Like they don't want to be there either. They're just chilling. They ain't doing dick.
National Guard had been deployed there and then left.
Yeah, so as to the criminal side, I mean, again, I don't expect the Justice Department to do anything about this since it's now the Trump Justice Department. With respect to the civil, on the civil side, though, You're right that most of the National Guard members are gone, but the judge said that there's still some remaining here. So even if it's in the low hundreds, his order requires them essentially to leave or to stop engaging in the conduct that was at issue here.
So then how do you expect this legal decision to impact President Trump's plans to possibly deploy National Guard troops to other cities like Chicago or New York, especially after he has done so here in D.C.? And what does it mean for the National Guard troops here in D.C. right now?
This is the National Guard in D.C. operates under different legal frameworks. So this doesn't really tell us much about the legality of the National Guard deployment in D.C. With respect to L.A. and California, I would expect DOJ to appeal. We'll see. As for the effect of this decision on the administration's decision to deploy the National Guard in other states, look, under ordinary circumstances, under prior administrations, you would expect the White House to take this extremely seriously and for it to deter them from those sorts of deployments. We do not know, given the way that this administration has conducted itself, whether it will actually take that position, because as we learned during the Supreme Court litigation over the injunctions, the universal injunctions, you may recall, the Justice Department's position was effectively, we can kind of do whatever we want, whatever jurisdiction, unless and until we get a circuit court ruling or an appeals court ruling. So they may decide to plow ahead. Last thing I'll just say here is that even if they, I think, were to decide to do so, I think one of the reasons we've seen them pull back a bit is because polling showed that these deployments of the National Guard were quite unpopular, both in California and even more recently in DC on a national level. Not as lopsided as the California deployment, but unpopular nonetheless.
And does this also show you how difficult it is to really challenge once the president deploys the National Guard in cities, right? I mean, that's been a big topic of discussion. What are cities?
Yeah, the other nefarious side of this, as I said already, is that they're deploying these guys so that they can offer protection to the federal law enforcement that's like being utilized like a Gestapo. That's it.
Officials like in Chicago and elsewhere, how are they going to do this if the president plows ahead with this plan? Because in this case, this was after the fact, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And actually, this judge tried to issue a ruling very early on, reaching effectively the same result, but he got overturned by the Ninth Circuit. Now, if you are the lawyers in those other jurisdictions and you expect or are thinking there may be a National Guard deployment, you should be using this decision sort of as an intellectual template for you, right? It lays out a set of standards that if you are the lawyers in those jurisdictions, you now want to adopt, and provides a level of analysis at the factual level that sort of gives you a roadmap for determining, okay, if I'm going to challenge the National Guard in my jurisdiction, I need to establish X, Y, and Z. And you'd want to follow the court's ruling pretty carefully just to demonstrate that you're following this authority. So I think you could see the upshot of that is I think you could see swifter responses as a result of this decision in jurisdictions where the National Guard may yet be deployed.
All right, Ankush Cordore, thank you so much.